What the hell is this? It's a dialogue-free, surreal, and almost aggressively atmospheric odyssey where you play as, no joke, a sentient lighthouse with legs, partnered with a sassy seabird on a journey to stomp through strange dreamscapes, battle corrupting chaos creeping through the world, and finding inner peace. Or maybe. I don't know exactly. I still don't know. But one thing I do know is that Keeper is so intrinsically Double Fine, it could have just been called Project A, and you would have still been able to tell. Developed by Double Fine under the direction of Lee Petty and published by Xbox Game Studios, it's set to release October 17th, which is today, for Xbox Series X and S and Windows, with day one on Game Pass. What Keeper is? Well, it's an exploratory game, a little bit like Journey, but without the high speed. Instead, a teetering, tottering, drunken uncle kind of lighthouse tower. One eye closed to create a cyclops with a giant searchlight, tumbling, bumbling, fumbling, stumbling, and crashing through the game world as you continue to explore a post-apocalyptic world and try to maybe save it. If you want to save, jump on into the Patreon. We've got a bunch of stuff half off, and we have an amazing place to go. Want to thank all the new people coming in. We've got hundreds upon hundreds coming into the various different families of the ACG group Discord or Telegram or wherever. YouTube members, I would love to have you join in. Let's begin. In Keeper, you play as a long-forgotten lighthouse, which after eons of living dormant is just suddenly awakened after a bird crash lands on top of it, seeking safety from this malevolent, massive storm. A bright beam of light emanates from you to symbolize that you're awakening after a millennia, and you scare away the strange dark clouds, and you guys become fast friends. In many ways, Keeper is really a companion game. Not in the ways that you would see with It Takes Two, but in a way that, be it interactions or investigation or sheer immersion, a shared experience that grows in complexity throughout. It's all about experimentation and curiosity, whether it's you as the lighthouse or as the bird Twig. It doesn't have a fail state. It doesn't have deaths, no way to really lose. The puzzles are part of the narrative as you move through it, and not just the completion of the puzzle that tells the story. Sometimes just doing them and finding about them ends up giving you information about the game world. One of the things I really like about this, and a part of the game that I absolutely do not expect everybody to enjoy, but where I personally adored it, is that not everything is answered. Listen, I get it. I definitely complain if a game just continually paces out lore with barely anything going on and sort of expects you to figure it out. But this is a game that is about the character that comes after humanity, a character that's not a part of it and never was. So their understanding of it and the way in which they move around this game world doesn't even reflect the initial species and those who actually originally created the world and put it together, but something different. So busting through houses and through abandoned cars, oddly enough, feels as if you're just busting through the normal landscape, at least at first. And then as you continue, you start to question yourself. I mean, imagine how odd it'd be if King Kong was thundering through a post-apocalyptic New York from I Am Legend. It carries a different feel to it than a populated city. So you start to get this amazing reflection and this intriguing feeling of, should I do this or shouldn't I? Almost as if we look at some cultures and try to keep whatever remaining and safe. Should I do the same thing here? Should I skirt around this small series of houses? Should I not traipse over these cars? They're the last vestiges of a civilization that'll go away forever. I can't remember the last time I went through a Native American graveyard just kicking through shit, because I haven't. And what would that be like when the entire world is one big graveyard? Admittedly, that also makes the game a lonelier one, a solitary one. Yes, even with your bird friend. But I've got to say, whatever is going on here, I appreciate it. Now, over a period of time, you realize how you're interacting with the world, speeding up on your spindly spider demon legs to blast through corrupted barricades that have grown up and infected the landscape around you, or using the light from your searchlight, or signal light in this case, to make landscapes grow, alter, and modify underneath its beam, changing the world around you in specific places. Sure, shining a light on a mystery is as on the nose as you're going to get. But sometimes in games crouched in mystery, you do need some concrete actions to offset the more obscure ones. However, games like this, like Abzu, like Journey, need to take care of the gamer. It needs to either allow for complete control of the visual angles and the movement, or the game needs to control them perfectly. Keeper has some issues here. The game does have a locked-in camera, which can be quite confusing at the starting of the game when you're trying to figure out how to move, with the camera locking into place somewhat akin to the old Resident Evil games, requiring you to be on top of your game, especially when the title flips a screen and suddenly you're facing left when you should be facing down. And you spend a moment thinking, what the hell? Especially because many of these locations are so alien, so organic, that tracing the line between up and down as a camera shifts can be a little bit frustrating. But as the time went on, it's simple enough, and the basic enough understanding of what's going on will let you work through the issues that do crop up. The great thing about Keeper is, despite its slow tact, and this is certainly something shared with other games of its ilk, there's just enough to keep that mystery going for me. For example, one of the first things I did was stop and see some of the denizens of the world, and you realize that if you shine your light on them, they clam up, disappearing, seeking shelter from you, which causes you to then, just for a moment, think to yourself, is it possible that I'm the scary creature? That I'm the one they're hiding from? Is this entire world scary and they just have to hide from everything? Then later on, you realize that Twig can mimic some of the creatures in the game world, and you try to figure out this weird pseudo communication. It is an exploratory game. It is a walking simulator in many aspects with puzzles built into it. Now, when it comes to graphics, at least when it comes to its art style, the game is absolutely up my alley. Unique blends of colorful, alien, surreal, and somehow at times almost pastel game worlds. A weird alien nostalgia feeling can start to creep up. It reminds me of prior games, weirdly enough, like Beyond Good and Evil. And that could be just because of the weird greens and blues being used. But then at the same time, the art style is also decrepit, bent, and twisted. For example, look no further than the Keeper itself. A bent shanker of a main character, spindly spider legs all askew and ticker-tacking around the game world as you move. But at the same time, a physics-based tower above it swaying to and fro that you have to balance, at least at the starting. And that's because the animation pays off, not only in the main character movement, but the game world. There's a moment that the ground crumbles underneath you and parts of the rock bridge fall down into the abyss. And as that debris cracks and bounces around beneath you, you can hear these rocks shattering, and Keeper leaps up against the wall like an action movie and slowly skitters along the edge of this barely remaining remnant of what can only be described as the world's worst bridge ever. The animation that plays throughout that is phenomenal. There's also some awesome alien designs you see. For example, the light hits a rock at the starting of the game, and that rock starts to move and hits another rock, and suddenly you see what appeared to be one thing turn into this massive snail-like rock creature. It feels like almost a mile in length, moving off into the background, disturbed either by your light, the movement, or possibly the danger that you may bring. That being said, one place I can say I was not happy was the performance. Now, first of all, there's an occasional stutter. This isn't the most notorious stutter we've seen before, something that we see in a lot of game worlds where the stutter's occurring while you actually play. This is, for example, when the game world massively changes. A bridge behind you collapsing, or one in front of you falling or being built by your light beam, or the traversal between one large location to another. While you're actually playing it, that doesn't happen. However, what does happen is just overall the frame rate is not where I would like it to be. If you're playing this game at 4K native, expect to not really get 60 FPS if you have the settings on high. If you're not able to, especially when I started getting deeper into the game, I was able to turn TSR, FSR, or DLSS on, all of which are within it. Doing so then elevated that above the 60. But it was an odd situation, especially when you look at this game and the pace in which it's delivered and its overall looks. It is impressive. It's not necessarily graphics intensive, though. Now, I should point out that the developers have stated that a day one patch is coming and will clean up some of the optimization issues and better framing in particular for that camera. Though I would say that as I continued to play, that didn't necessarily continue to be the biggest problem. Another place that isn't a problem is the game's audio, especially the voice, because, well, there is none. So moving on from there. The next part of this, though, is, of course, the music. This is a very vibe-ish affair and certainly more of a ground floor kind of ethereal vibe than it is over-the-top orchestral mixed themes that you would expect to hear in a lot of songs or tracks in other games. It's a title that many times has the hush of this open-world area and echoing sound effects of your travel played across and atop an almost single chord-like structure interspersed with more complexity when the game calls for it. Now, this works well for me. It gives me a feeling of that journey, kind of a slow moving and exploration, and doesn't necessarily need a ton of music. What is there, though, I did like. It's just that there aren't necessarily any over-the-top tracks or really catchy tunes. And that really is to dial in the environmental audio, which is here. Wide open areas. They seem giant in this audioscape, opening up around you at all times. There's that hush that I've talked about in other reviews as well, with the wind slightly moving and just the open world sound that I like when they do it so well. You can also hear your own footsteps a bit, or the sound of growing undergrowth becoming overgrowth as you try to change the world around you. And I dug all that. The only thing is, though, this traipsing, tear-assing, Dr. Seuss-looking construction somehow moves with almost no sound. I can see where maybe the ticky-tack click of spider legs would become annoying, especially hours into the game, but this damn thing is quieter than Sam Fisher during stealth moments. And there's a disconnect there that I would have liked to have seen those brought up in the mixing. I was able to adjust a couple of the audio levels, but unfortunately, never really got that dialed in so that it felt like this gargantuan creature moving around, or maybe not a creature, but magical entity, whatever. But does all this make a game fun, especially a walking simulator, which aren't necessarily up everybody's alley? If you look at it, games like this and games that it's going to be compared to, for example, your Journeys or your Abzus, they do move at a faster pace. Smaller characters exploring a game world in a more game-like fashion. Well, Keeper certainly does have game elements, trying to understand what to grow, trying to understand where to go. It's a slower-paced game, and in that way, may not be as fun in a pure gameplay experience as some people expect. Nevertheless, there's something about the teetering around this game world, shining your light, trying to figure out what you're seeing and what that experience means for you or this game world, whether it's environmental storytelling or something that you're actually making a direct change to. But be aware, the game's never going to really require from you a great deal, at least in terms of clicking a button to do something quickly. And that brings us to the rating. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, deep sale, or never touch rating system, where this particular title is on Game Pass and you can easily just jump in and get it. If you don't have Game Pass, this is more about should you turn around and get it right away. And for that, I would say this one is really only at the normal price for big-time fans of this, and that's fine. In the strictest terms, this is a niche title within another niche, a slow-moving, more methodical, more mysterious style of walking simulator that goes even more eclectic than other titles we've seen, like The Station. They're unique games, and this one almost experimental in many ways. Not in the way that they throw different elements at you and gameplay adjustments consistently, but just in the idea of trying to tell a story and letting the player figure out some of those mysteries on their own. And because of that, the theme of the story, the plot of the story, the way that story developed and manicured and delivered itself to me is going to matter more than almost anything else. So what I would suggest to you is if you do think that you want to get this and you're not a diehard fan, go and look at this video again as you're watching the review, or take a look at other people's videos and decide for yourself if this one seems that it's not only within your bailiwick, but also in that tighter section, because it's not a game that's going to require a ton from you, but it is a game that maybe you just sit back and if you want to explore, somewhat like Abzu or your Journey, as I said before, it actually ends up delivering an excellence in a different way. So anyway, that's it for me. Listen, if you want to join the hundreds of other people that are in the Discord, we got more people joining every single day. Fantastic place to play games, talk about games in a free environment, play D&D, stream titles. We do podcasts twice a week in there, as well as the podcast you normally see, where we sit down, we talk about behind the scenes and everything that goes into helping people play games and find new games. That's where we are. And in today's environment, seems to me, it's probably the most important thing. And I think we put together an amazing place. So while other people are asking you to join another patron or jump into another subscription of some kind, I'm just telling you, I'd appreciate a like. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.